Welcome to the Military Justice Today podcast with your host, Robert Capovilla and Mickey Williams, covering the full range of military law topics from all branches of the armed forces. Today's episode is made possible in part by the law firm of Capovilla and Williams. And now, let's welcome the hosts of the show, Rob and Mickey.
All right, everybody, we are back in the studio for another episode of Military Justice Today. I'm Matt Starosiak, always stepping in just momentarily for the important people around here, Mr. Robert Capovilla. Nice to see you, Robert.
Good to see you, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. You look great today. Your smiling face is it's tremendous today.
Well, spring is here. And that means Major League Baseball is back, and it is a Friday afternoon. So there's a lot to be grateful for.
And you've got your members only, your 1984 members only jacket on here in the studio.
This jacket, so just for the folks listening, by the way, according to numbers, we had 3,000 listeners on our most recent podcast that was released, which was the most we've ever had. So thank you to everybody who does listen to this. But for the record, I'm wearing like a windbreaker jacket that I got at Target for like $35 that Matt is convinced is some kind of like, I don't know, country club windbreaker. But it is in fact not.
If you buy the members only jacket, you get half off on the Docksiders, I think.
I can assure you I am not a member with Target in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I don't particularly like Target.
Well, we also have the pleasure of having a call-in guest, but a very important member of the firm, Brad Simon, on the line with us. Hey, Brad, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Where are you at today? Are you in San Antonio?
I am. I'm home in San Antonio. I was supposed to be on a flight to Korea, but fortunately that got moved, so I'm home in San Antonio enjoying the beautiful March weather here in Texas.
Yeah, I was saying you've been kind of traveling all over the place, so it's got to be nice to be home for a while. And I do suspect your weather's good there this time of year, right?
Yeah, it's not too warm. We get a little bit of spring before that 100-degree heat kicks in here, so I'm enjoying it. Going to be going outside, barbecuing a little bit this weekend.
Oh, good. Very nice.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. This is your first time, so welcome. It's as you know from having listened to the episodes, it's pretty informal, but you're a relatively new member of the firm, right? How long has it been? A few months now?
Yeah, just a few months. I think I came over right around the beginning of 2024, so about two and a half months so far.
But you're certainly not new to the world of military justice. You were quite an accomplished JAG in the Air Force, correct?
Yes, I was. I was fortunate to serve both as a prosecutor, but more of my time as defense counsel and still in the reserve, and I actually got picked up to become a teacher, teaching a junior advocate how to do a trial act.
No way. So what was the best part of your military career? What was the thing that you enjoyed the most?
I would say getting to travel the world and meeting clients. I think that's overlooked so often in what we do when we are active duty. We think so much of the day-to-day grind or filling out our own evaluations and stuff of that nature, but actually getting to travel the world and meet these clients who need someone to stand up for them, that was by far the greatest aspect of that job.
And I got to cut in here for a minute because it's always awkward talking about yourself a little bit, right? So, here's what I want the listeners to know about Brad. So Brad was the two-time Area Defense Counsel of the Year in the Air Force, was a civilian military attorney for a couple years before joining us. And he is really a spectacular advocate. And he knows his rules and the technical aspects of court-martial better than just about anybody I've been associated with. And as you can imagine, given what I do for a living, I'm associated with a lot of people who talk a lot of military justice. So we're thrilled to have Brad with us. And, to say that he's done a good job so far would be an understatement. And Brad and I are some big cases together, and I can't wait to get in the courtroom with him.
And the clients like him too, from what I understand. The clients, they like him too.
Everybody seems to, everybody but Mickey seems to like Brad. Mickey doesn't like the Air Force very much. He thinks that as an Army Ranger, he thinks that he's too tough for the Air Force, and he kind of no, that's all made up. Everybody likes Brad, including Mickey.
I appreciate it, guys.
And look, if you get in the gym and you can throw up a lot of weight, you'll instantly earn Mickey's respect. So that's all you got to do is bench press 485 3 times, and you'll be on his good side. Well, Brad, we
sounds like I'm ordering bulk protein this weekend.
There you go. Yeah, hit the protein powder too. Well, Brad, it is great to have you on the show. We've got a serious topic, but we always start with something kind of meaningless and lighthearted. So I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in on a couple questions that we normally give our guest or have in the past. And I'm going to give you the choice of which one you want to talk about. So you can either tell us who the most famous person you've ever met is and kind of the circumstances around that, or you can talk to us about your favorite or favorites military movies. And I'll give you the choice, sir.
I'll go with the first. The most famous person I met, I would say there's probably two. From one when I was a little kid and one when I was more of an adult. When I was about 8 years old, I got to meet Cal Ripken Jr.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who is by far my favorite baseball player. Played for my favorite team, the Orioles. My dog is named after Cal Ripken. He is everything I've aspired to be, in the way that he showed up to work day in and day out and performed at a high level. I think there's a lot you can take from that. I was playing Little League Baseball, and my team won the championship, and Cal Ripken came to the minor league stadium there in Delaware, and we were fortunate to be on the field and got to meet him. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm actually sitting in my office right here, and I have two Cal Ripken Jr. cards and his little bobblehead as well.
Nice.
So I would say that's number one. And then the second, I actually was fortunate enough to work for a United States Senator before going to law school. And I got to drive him and was a staff assistant and ran his internship program. But one of the times that I drove him, we went around and met a lot of famous politicians, including the now president, Joe Biden. So I would say that's probably a pretty cool experience that not a lot of people get to do. So I would say those are two of the more famous people. Never got to meet many actors.
Any pictures to verify these encounters or no?
I would ask my mom. I guarantee there are. She seems to keep a collage of everything my brothers and I have ever done. So it's somewhere in that basement. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. We don't want to get Rob talking too much about baseball because the show will go 2 hours, but the Cal Ripken is really amazing. He was probably my favorite player growing up as a kid as well. I always thought that the moment he broke the record of the consecutive games played, that kind of celebration where he's going around the field, in my opinion, is one of the craziest and greatest things I've ever seen in sports or otherwise.
I remember.
I couldn't agree more.
I remember Cal Ripken. So one of the greatest moments I got to ever watch on a baseball field was when Cal Ripken hit that home run in the All-Star game. I think it was his last year in the league, and he was kind of old, and he wasn't what he used to be. He wasn't even playing shortstop anymore, but he was kind of like an honorary member of the All-Star team. And I think it was the first inning, he hits a home run. And I remember watching that thinking, man, that's baseball history.
You think they served it up to him though?
They certainly could have. They certainly could have, but I mean, even still, as a young guy, 14 or whatever I was, watching that was you're watching baseball history. It was a cool moment.
Brad, did you play a lot of ball growing up? Were you a baseball player?
I was. I wish I could say that I, made it to the pros, but by no means. I watch it all the time. I enjoy playing, and I have two little ones of my own that I actually can't wait to get out and teach them how to throw a ball and be a part of it. I think baseball is by far the greatest sport. It teaches you that 7 out of 10 times you may fail, but if you hit the ball 3 times, you come to the Hall of Fame. It shows that you might fail more than you succeed, but you get back out there and keep doing it. I think there's so much to baseball that just goes into life.
Yeah, point well made. Point well made.
I agree.
Well,
100%.
I won't give you the question I usually give Rob about whether or not he could hit a major league pitcher if I gave him 6 months.
No.
Just to practice.
I know
he hates that question.
I know that this is a little off topic, but Brad, here's what I want to tell you as the history of this question.
Please give the short story.
Okay, Matt and I decide, our families, because our wives are good friends. We decide that we're going to go watch a AA game in Rome, Georgia, Rome Braves, and the dude
Single A, I think.
No, I think they're AA, I think. Anyway, so the pitcher on the mound is, throwing 95, 96, 97. And Matt legitimately asks me, do you think you could go in there and hit him? And I said, no, Matt, he's a professional baseball player.
I said, if I gave you 6 months,
no,
you didn't have to do anything except practice hitting the baseball. Could you hit him?
No, I could not hit. At this age, there's no shot I could hit a 97-mile-an-hour fastball. No shot. Zero chance.
Brad,
I'm with you. 0% chances I sit here today on the 8th of March. Am I hitting a 97-mile-per-hour fastball?
Now, maybe high school or college, different story when I was playing all the time. And we saw a lot of guys throwing 90, not a lot of guys throwing 97. Maybe I could have put bat on, barrel on ball then, but not now. No chance.
Brad, the best part about this story, and it's come up at least a half a dozen times, is when Rob says he can't do it, I always look at him like I'm so disappointed. like that's the best part. I get to look at him and just look at him with kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So disappointing.
Same.
That's right.
Anyhow, let's get to the topic of the day. So, Brad, for those that don't know, you and I are some of the lead counsel on the case of United States versus Michael Stockin, which is a case that's been covered by every major news outlet in the country. And we're not going to talk about that case, but I give that as a precursor to what this topic is about. And really, it comes down to this. Does the military justice system give alleged victims of sexual assault enough resources during their case, during that court-martial process? And this question and topic spurs from an article published by CBS where some of the victim advocates in the Stockin case attacked the United States Army. Now, obviously, those same attorneys are also bringing lawsuits against the United States Army, in this case, claims. So they have an impetus or a motive to make some of these statements they've made. But, Brad, you saw the article. They really, really, really attacked the Army, basically alleging that the Army does not care about victims of sexual assault. They don't give them enough resources. They don't give them access to attorneys. And I thought for sure the response from the Army is going to be like, hey, no, here's the 197 things we do for every alleged victim in a court-martial, from expedited transfers to giving them their own attorneys to making sure that they will, on most occasions, travel out their entire families for support. And of course, in kind of true Army fashion, they don't even really address it. So I want to do that because I think the truth is important. So Brad, let's kind of start off this way, my friend. As a guy who's practiced pretty much solely in military courts the last, however many years, you've been in Navy courts, you've been in Air Force courts, you've been in Army courts, you've been in Marine courts, and so on and so forth. Give us kind of a breakdown of what does the law say about the rights that victims have during the court-martial process?
I think we need to step even farther back. Is before they even get to the court-martial process, Rob, when they go to make their complaints and make their allegations, speak to investigators, they're notified and they're provided a form that the Department of Defense actually created. So it's not just a specific branch, but the Department of Defense gives them this form. I believe it's a 2701 or something of that nature that outlines, it's 2-3 pages long of every single right that they have. And they make sure that these individuals understand this. Their right to family advocacy, their right to a victim advocate, their right to assistance with compensation for medical expenses. They get constant updates on their criminal investigation. So right from the beginning, they're treated with the utmost respect. They're coming forward with an allegation. But to turn to your question in particular about their rights during a court-martial, that comes from Article 6 Bravo. And it enumerates their rights, the right to be reasonably protected from the individual they're accusing, the right to be made aware of any hearings that are going on, and to sit in these hearings, to be a part of these hearings, whether they be preliminary hearings like Article 32's, court-martial hearings, Article 39 alphas, which are motion practices or stuff outside of the formal courtroom. They can't be excluded unless otherwise necessary by the military judge. Sometimes there's private hearings that other individuals, everyone but the judge and the counsel can be a part of. But they are thoroughly involved and, in fact, have their own lawyer, what's called a special victims counsel or victim counsel, or victim legal counsel. They're all used interchangeably depending on the service, who will notify them and be with them throughout it, can speak on their behalf, communicate with government counsel, and in fact can even communicate with defense counsel. So there is no doubt about it that the victims in the military justice system are treated extremely well. I know that gets right to the conclusion, but there's so many steps along the way there, Rob.
Well, let's kind of go to the origin of the complaint phase, because I think that's important. Brad, one of the things that we try to do as defense counsel is we always try to identify those motives to fabricate, right? What is a common sense explanation for why this alleged victim is making the complaint? And part of that analysis always goes back to, did they file for a compassionate reassignment, or did they file for an expedited transfer? Talk to us a little bit about what those terms mean and what rights are available to alleged victims after they make those complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone makes a complaint of certain crimes, whether it be sexual assault or domestic violence, they can apply for what's called an expedited transfer, otherwise known as an ET. That's the real common term for it, where they can say, hey, I don't feel safe at this base anymore because my accuser's here. And they can explain why. And that stays, in a sense, for the most part, confidential. And they get transferred to another base, often of their choosing, their one or two selections. Sometimes they do this, they go back to family, but more often not, you see if they're going to, I hate to say, a better base. So if you're in the middle of nowhere and all of a sudden you now have the opportunity to go to, whether it be Hawaii, Italy, Germany, the beaches of Florida, this does happen, but it's done and it's created a program that enables alleged victims and victims to come forward and say, I don't want to be here anymore. And they fill out some paperwork, typically with the help of a government counsel, whether that be a victim advocate or a victim witness assistant. It's called a VWAP, or even a victim witness liaison, which is a VWL. They help them along the way fill out this type of application to get them transferred out of that installation and onto a new post or new base quite quickly as well.
And these benefits that are available to them are on top of the almost certain no contact order that the accused is going to get. So it's not just safety reasons. It's also to make sure that this alleged victim, who may or may not have been the victim of a serious crime, can get a fresh start, can go to a place they're comfortable. I mean, am I right about that?
Absolutely. And it's not just a fresh start also on that end. They also, if there was surrounding circumstances that are associated with these allegations. So let's say someone was underage and they were drinking and they claimed they were a victim of sexual assault at the same time. There's actually been policy that's come out that said you should not punish that individual for that underlying other criminal offense. They are a victim and we need to not punish them for that, and let's help them process through that.
Now, as a bit of a foil, talk about what happens to our clients on these initial stages who are accused of sexual assault. What's their got it? The alleged victim fills out some paperwork, probably gets a really nice assignment somewhere. What's going on with our clients at this exact phase?
Well, again, I think it's important to think about when they come in to report the allegation. So typically when a victim comes in to report the allegation, they'll have someone sitting there with them. They're in a nice room. It's bright, warm pictures on the wall, a comfortable couch, snacks and drinks are offered, as many breaks as they want. Sometimes they even can have their phone with them and on them as they're talking. Whereas when our clients come in, they come into a cold room, typically windowless. They're sitting in an uncomfortable chair, typically in the corner with 2 or 3 other agents in the room, kind of triangulating against them. They might be offered a bottle of water at most, a bathroom break, maybe 45 minutes into it. So I think just from the beginning, it's important to recognize the stark differences.
Well, and also, I have never heard about an alleged victim having to wait hours to see and to talk to law enforcement at the station. Some of our clients, Brad, 6, 7, 8 hours, they sit there by themselves with likely just an escort. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so these our clients get brought in, typically never knowing why they're being brought in. They show up to work, or heck, I've had clients who are at the gym where their first sergeant says, hey, I need you to come. And they let them know, I'm sweating right now. It doesn't matter. They pick them up and bring them over to the whether it be OSI or CID, NCIS. We've had clients literally taken from their bed as well, Rob. You and I both know that.
Yep.
And they're brought in there and they'll sit for a good 2 hours sometimes. Then they go in and investigators will try and build a small rapport and then leave and have them sit there again for another hour. Then if our clients decide to invoke the right to counsel, which is their absolute constitutional right and something that they should do, they then will leave them there for another hour, hour and a half, almost as punishment. And then they'll come in and try and wrap it up. So they've been now in a 6-hour meeting, maybe have gotten to actually speak to somebody for all 15 minutes and still are never made clear what they're actually being accused of until they get those rights read to them, which is, they try and rush over. It's almost criminal, Rob. It truly is almost criminal how they're treated. The whole presumption of innocence is thrown out the window.
So let's talk about the process then. So alleged victim submits a expedited transfer, a compassionate reassignment. They go off to whatever base they're now wanting to be at, because we all know they're likely going to get their first or second choice. And I agree with you. I have certainly seen some that want to get closer to family, and that's understandable. I've also seen some that just want to be on the beach. While the expedited transfer is executed, our client is done with the interview. They now know they're under investigation. What do they do at work? Are they typically suspended? Are they typically considered outcasts? Can they get promoted? Can they move on with their careers? Talk to a bit about that process.
Well, yeah. So right away, they're accused and they're presumed to be guilty and a pariah on society and on the unit. And I don't use that term lightly, because initially, almost often, they're provided a no contact order. Understood, command says don't contact this person. But then what also happens is they're issued a military protective order. And a military protective order also registers in the civilian world. Additionally, sometimes our clients will be told, hey, you can't have any weapons, which is their right to have. But command will say, nope, we don't want you to have any access to any weapons whatsoever. Then, if that's not enough, they then are typically flagged, or always flagged, which prevents them from upgrade training, going on TDYs, promoting, having access to continue learning and education, and often being able to not even go on deployments, which is what a lot of soldiers, Marines, airmen want to do. They want to be able to go on a deployment with their fellow soldiers and military members. So typically they're not allowed to do that. And if that's not enough, then their security clearance is often suspended. While again, they're presumed to be innocent, they don't even have access to the clearance that they've rightfully entitled. And they can't even make statements because there's a pending investigation and we don't know the parameters of what's really out there yet. Then they're also typically removed from the unit in a sense. Though they may still be a part of it, they often can't do their job. They're thrown in to go in to do logistics or picking weeds and seeds, sitting at a front desk, maybe doing CQ. All their entire role, which so many people, rightfully myself when I was active duty, identifies in the military, is stripped away from them. And it's not like this only lasts for 30 to 45 days. These investigations, all the way up to when command makes a decision, can last anywhere from 7 months up to 18, 24 months. And that's not an exaggeration. So for almost 2 years, their entire career is stilted, it's halted. And then once they're finally cleared, let's say it gets to that point where there's no accusation, the allegations don't go forward. No one says, oh, we're so sorry, and try and backdate everything and fix everything. No, it's 2 years of their military career have been completely lost with nothing more than, well, you should have done better or thought of a different decision earlier. There's a complete stark difference between how alleged victims are treated and how the accused are treated. And it is disappointing not to have the military stand up and say, hey, no, we treat these individuals great. It was disappointing.
Well, and not to mention, the accused is likely also going to be titled, which means that there's a probable cause, essentially a probable cause determination made by the law enforcement agency that's investigating it. And oftentimes they will title people before our client even has an opportunity to be heard, before the investigation's finished, before all the evidence is collected. And that titling action remains on their background for the remainder of their life, unless by some miracle, the Board of Corrections, whether it's Army or Navy and Marine Corps and Air Force, removes that titling action. So even if they're found not guilty at trial, or let's just say the allegation is dropped altogether, if they've been titled, that also remains with them, for the remainder of their military career and in a lot of cases, the remainder of their lives. But I want to now kind of fast forward a bit. We've talked about the initial complaint. We've talked a little bit about the process leading up to a court martial and how alleged victims are treated compared to the accused. And listen, some of that makes sense, right? Because we don't want alleged victims. We don't want alleged victims to be treated poorly. That's absolutely not the right answer. They deserve to have resources. They deserve to be treated with respect through the process. They deserve to have counsel. They deserve to know what's going on. But I do think the military could do a heck of a lot better in making sure that these service members who are accused of crimes are given at least the basic essentials to be healthy, both physically and mentally, because we know suicide is an issue with service members and veterans. That being said, let's talk about, we're kind of winding down to the end of the show here, Brad, so I want to talk about trial itself. I have, in the last 3 or 4 years in particular, I have very distinct memories of walking into courtrooms all over this country, and literally 3/4 of the gallery will be filled with the alleged victim, her entire family, her victim advocate from family advocacy or whatever, her victim's legal counsel, 2 or 3 paralegals who are assigned to her victim's legal counsel, and my client will be there with nobody. And those people are traveled by the military to be there typically, and they stay there with the alleged victim during the entire trial. Has that been your experience? I mean, have you also seen the same thing?
Absolutely. And they get their victim counsel there, and then they also get what's typically called like an emotional support person. And that person will travel with them everywhere. And you made a great point there. Their whole full support team that the government is willing to produce and bring with them to this trial. But when the accused seeks to have his mom and dad and maybe his brother be there, the government will object and say, nope, that's cumulative. You only can get one of them. They're not viewing this person as a person. They're viewing it as almost as an impediment to them being able to try and do their job. But I want to talk a little bit about that as well, Rob. Like, not just the support that they have in there, but throughout the entire process. From start to finish, they have the rules of evidence. There's specific rules that help to design. And if a ruling goes against them, there's actually been a change that now their victims counsel can file a writ of mandamus right away. I mean, there's no doubt about that from the beginning that we walk into a courtroom, it's not just the government, it's also the alleged victim and 20 people plus that are there sitting with that person. And like you said, they deserve to have the resources and rights and support. But the scales are not balanced by any means.
Hey, Brad, let me jump in for a second. I guess as I'm hearing you and Rob talk, I've heard a lot of these things before, so I can't say that they're surprising anymore. But let me ask you, in your opinion, do you find that service members that are accused will take pleas at times that they shouldn't take just because they can't handle the situation? They don't have the support, they don't have the resources, and so they kind of feel like they don't have a choice, and they end up taking a plea. We're in a case where you're your defense counsel, you think they have a winnable case or should be exonerated, but they can't deal with the stress and the lack of resources, so they end up taking a bad plea.
I would say at times, yeah. Obviously they can't ever plead to something they're not guilty of. But I do see that a lot of times service members will say, I just don't want this going on anymore. I can't handle it. They might have gained 30 pounds or have lost 30 pounds. And they submit, administrative dispositions to try and avoid going to court because they can't handle it anymore. Or they do. They come to counsel and say, hey, I just want this to be done. Get me a deal. I don't want to plead to what I'm accused of, but maybe I can plead to something else. And they do. And it's depressing because unfortunately a trial might not be set for several months out.
How do you handle
along the way?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go Matt.
How do you handle that situation where, I guess you become more of an emotional counselor to your client at that point, trying to advise them to do what's in their best interest, but also understanding, the predicament that they're in? How do you handle that personally as defense counsel?
No, absolutely. So I this isn't just a plug for Capovilla and Williams, but I think our entire team, we understand we're more than just lawyers. I mean, obviously we can't be the person, our client therapist 24/7. But we are there to care and to support. And I think from day one, we were able to instill confidence. So fortunately, I don't think we don't deal with that as much because it's clear from the start that we are here to support you. And we do make it known that it might be long and there will be ups and downs, but you always do have someone in your corner. I think it depends on what the client wants when it's all said and done, though, Matt. I think it really depends on, is this an individual who just wants to move on with their life? Meaning they're ready for this chapter to close and they're ready to move out of the military? Or is this an individual who feels downtrodden, feels that no one else is in their corner? Because if it's the former, if they're just ready to move on, you explain the options, but that might be what's best. But if it's because they feel downtrodden and they feel that they've had mud kicked in their face and they feel like the bullies and tyrants and the government is just pushing them down farther and farther and no one's listening to them, that's when we're able to really stand up for them. And I've been fortunate, I would say, in my career that I've been able to have many clients turn that view around and realize there is hope. And though we can't ever guarantee an outcome, I would say we've had a lot of success. And at the end of that, when that not guilty verdict comes and they break down crying and they hug us and thank us for their support, that it makes it worth it. And it is hard to do, but instilling that trust, I think, and explaining to them the outcomes of their case and the benefits of keep fighting and the weaknesses in the government's case, I think makes a world of difference. And it almost rejuvenates them.
No, I think that's well said, Brad. And my last kind of topic / question for you is this. We saw what CBS published about how the Army treats alleged victims. You and I live in that system every single day. It is our livelihood. It is our lives, along with our VA cases and our FTCA cases. I mean, this is what we do. I got I guess I should say, a little dumbfounded by the Army's response to these allegations. They don't take care of alleged victims, because we see firsthand how much resources the Army in particular pumps in to make sure alleged victims have everything they need. And then you look at the response to the questions from CBS. It's like, well, every alleged victim knows that they have the right to go on base to seek legal services. And that's our entire comment. Thank you. Were you surprised when you saw the Army kind of just, take that frontal assault and do nothing? Did that shock you at all? Because it shocked me a little bit.
It did. I hate to parrot, but it did. It blew me away. And as a lawyer, my wife will tell you, as myself, I'm never at a loss for words. I truly was. It made no sense that the pendulum has swung so far to entitle victims with benefits and with rights and with support systems, that this was a perfect opportunity for the Army and military at large to get on a soapbox and literally rattle off each and every program that's offered.
Exactly right.
To even go as far as to say, if an alleged victim doesn't want to participate anymore, we respect that. We respect their privacy and we don't harass, and we stop the case. And in fact, we even ask them what they desire for the outcome of the case. And if they want this individual to be removed from the military, we often try and administratively separate them without even the victim having to participate. I mean, this was a golden opportunity for the Army and military at large to get on a soapbox, use a megaphone, and scream it for all to hear. I mean, I was blown away. Blown away.
And to me, I think the Army has a public relations problem, and I think it's been going on for a long time. And I think this ties into why they're having massive recruiting problems, because they seem to no longer understand what they actually stand for. And that's a real problem for the Army, because the Army, when we were kids, Brad, Matt, when you were, already kind of a young adult, I mean, the commercials, the message, the pride coming up through the first Gulf War after 9/11. And now it seems like the Army, look, I'll just be blunt. I don't know who the Army is paying to handle their public relations. I don't know who their publicist is.
You think I can get in there?
Yeah. They need to really reconsider their message across a number of different forums, because Brad is spot on. This was a perfect opportunity for the Army to be like, okay, actually, hold on. Here is every single thing we do. And oh, by the way, our state counterparts and our federal counterparts don't do 1/3 of this. But instead, the Army, for whatever reason, just fails once again to defend itself. And Brad, I'm becoming more and more convinced as the days go by that we may very well see a day where Congress demands that the Army release their jurisdiction given to them via the UCMJ, and that there is a congressional mandate, or however that would work, that says all sexual assault or sexual assault related or all felony level trials are now going to be going to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it's a shame, because the court-martial process is by and large a fair one. It's by and large a historic process that is, steeped in kind of our nation's history. I mean, George Washington was ordering court-martials. And I think they're going to lose that jurisdiction if they don't do a better job articulating the efforts they're making to protect alleged victims of crimes, because I would give them an F- for their job when it comes to public relations. It's almost laughable. It's almost so stupid that you can't take it.
I think, and I'm no expert on military PR, but I've got a little bit of experience in PR in general. And I think a lot of times these days, the advice you get or the decision that's made is just say very little, because the more you say on this, if the issue is emotionally charged, the more you say, it gets twisted, it gets turned, you just cannot win. And so I wouldn't be surprised listening to what you've described, and I didn't see the actual response, that somebody's saying, look, we're probably in the right here. We could produce all this information about what we do, but better just to let this thing go and let it die down.
That may have been their thought.
It's a poor policy, but it may be the policy.
That may have been their thought process, but it's there's no other way to say it. I mean, I'm a blunt person. It's their response to all this so far has been just dumb.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful opportunity to show how there are so many good people working in the court-martial system, and instead it's, every alleged victim can get legal services on base. That's your response after millions and millions and millions of dollars expended on making sure alleged victims have rights. That's what your response is. And in the meantime, they still do a very poor job taking care of the accused. So
it seems like a mess.
But I will say this for anybody who is a Department of the Army or DOD that's listening, and I know we have several listeners. Matt is
I'm available.
He is not available. He works PR for Capovilla Williams.
I'm available for a government contract. I'm available.
He is not available. He cannot be hired by you folks. Okay. He has a mission here with us.
Hey, Brad, we're probably going to wrap it up. Do you have any other thoughts? Anything that we didn't get to, or any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just come full circle and say it was a swing and a miss. I was pretty proud of that dad joke I just came up with. So.
That's a good one. Brad,
thank
you.
Next episode, we're going to bring you into town. We're going to have a home run derby between you and Capovilla out in the backfield behind the podcast studio, and we'll settle all the scores at that time. Great to get you on the show. We'll obviously have you back. Important topic, interesting topic, and I'm sure our listeners will appreciate it. So another episode of Military Justice Today in the books. Take care, everybody. Be safe. We'll catch up with you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Military Justice Today podcast with your hosts, Robert Capovilla and Mickey Williams. This show was made possible in part by the law firm of Capovilla and Williams. For more information or to listen to more episodes, visit militaryjusticetoday.com.